Dale 101.
Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
What's good, ladies and gentlemen? What's good, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to wait till the chat room get filled up. You already know what time it is. The book is out. You know what I'm saying? So tonight's edification, we're going to get into the transmission of the book. The Sacred Book of the Chosen is out now on Amazon. You can get your publication. And eventually, I'm going to put it out, an audiobook. I'm eventually going to put it out on an ebook as well. But it's one of those things where you got to be very meticulous when it comes to putting out publications, because the great majority of people who try to siphon, energy to put out the publication themselves, put it on PDFs or whatever. So right now, it's just a physical copy. So you can purchase your copy on Amazon. And do not put BDale 1014. My name is Brydale Rice Bay. Put the author title if you cannot find me, or just put the title of the book, The Sacred Book of the Chosen. And also, the link is also in the comments as well. So we're going to wait till the chat room gets filled up. And where's everybody from in the chat? Salute to everybody in the chat. You already know what time it is. You already know what time it is. And salute to everybody. And I appreciate, the B-Day wishes and everything, because, this is my first publication that I ever put out. And I also, maybe about like 2 years ago, I put out an audio comic book with this one guy who worked, side by side with Dr. Malachi Z. York, Freedom Master Teacher. His name is Ramus Unk, and he created the great majority of the illustrations inside of Dr. York's books. And that's the guy who basically created my intro for my YouTube channel and my outro. So salute to Ramus Unk for that. And I'm also going to show you the illustrations that's basically correlated with my audio comic book, because a lot of people been following me for a long period of time, for the last 3 years. Like I said, it's one of those things where you got to have a solid grind for loud success. I've been making videos in my car, way before I thought about, having a YouTube channel, because at first I just started out on Facebook. I mean, the inception point of me starting out a YouTube channel and things of that nature is that I put up a post a long time ago talking about the Black woman as God and how she has the mitochondrial Eve gene in order to reverse the polarity of the matrix system by way of the rise of the matriarch because of her genetic format. And it was a pastor, he commented under the publication, and we got into a civil debate. And a lot of people found me because of that video when I was talking about the Black woman as God. And then me and him, we had a civil debate online. And he's like some type of a super preacher. He got a super church in Texas. And we had a civil debate, and the video almost had like 400,000 views, and we debated each other, and they removed the video off Facebook because they said I was bullying. But, I was just really breaking down the hypocrisy of westernized monotheistic religion that's based on Eurocentric ideologies, which is the foundational blueprint for imperialism. So this book, man, this book is not only subjected to those who have higher knowledge. This book is also the quantum engine and the initiation process for the people who's trying to tap into the spiritual journey. Now, this book is really just a balance. This book is also for those who's already tapped into the information, but it's one of those things, the book is going to put you in alignment to receive the influx of information as far as like higher knowledge. So as far as, the great majority of the mechanics of my teachings, I basically condense it down and I make it, clarifiable to everybody who's trying to, receive the information. So a person from the streets can resonate with the information, and the person who works, you know, a CEO or a person who, you know, basically in between the spiritual and the physical world at the same time. It's a balanced publication, so you can give this book to anybody and they're going to be able to resonate with the information inside the book, because I go real deep into the manifestations of the metaphysics of it, and meaning that, you know, we're going to get into the quantum mechanics of how to manifest and alchemize your reality just by way of, you know, shifting your mindset. Because as I was telling you guys before, when you change your mind, you change your vibration. That vibration becomes magnetism. And that magnetism is cultivated by the heart chakra, which is connected to the Schumann resonance of planet Earth. So that means that you have to harmonize with the frequencies of nature in the Fibonacci sequence and the Fibonacci golden spiral. That's how you basically, you know, create, you know, your reality within the factions of the dualistic paradox. So this book is going to give you the blueprint on how to manifest as the old world is basically crumbling, right? Because the meek shall inherit the earth. Matthew 22:14. Many are called, only few are chosen. So that's why this book in this time period, the sacred book of the chosen, are for those who is really tapped in. These are for the people who was basically castigated. This book is for the people that was called nerds. This book is for people who was basically, you know, different than everybody within, you know, their family tree. This book is for, you know, the black sheep of the family. This book is for anybody who's basically felt like they've been castigated by society and ostracized. So that's why I said this book is one of those things where it's going to help you reset mentally, because the great majority of the reason why the great majority of people cannot tap into their energy of manifestation because of the trauma, because the trauma in itself is what put neurons, caps on the neurons, basically. And in order to alchemize your reality, like I said, you got to go through the healing process. You got to, you know, you got to go through the process of self-realization. First, you realize your trauma, then you heal from it. Then you tap into your authenticity, which leads you to your purpose. And your purpose is connected to the Sahara, which is the Zohar body that is connected to the ancient Kemetic spiritual teachings. So that is, I'll talk about that in this publication. It's called The Glow. Now, we're going to get into, I got a cosmic foreword. I'll go into the rise within the fall. I'll talk about what does it mean to be chosen. I'm talking about the culmination process of the cosmic convergence of the 144,000. And I'm also talking about the glow, the level up, the shift, NPCs versus the chosen ones, because you're going to have a Christ energy on the planet. Because one thing you got to understand about, you know, people who don't have the ability to alchemize their reality as the old world is falling. What's going to happen is that you got to look at a person who has a high frequency, look at them like a water bottle. Now, a water bottle denotes the fact that you're basically full of spiritual energy. You're basically so into yourself to the point where you don't need external stimulation. So anytime that you leak energy, that basically puts holes inside your aura. That's basically equivalent to putting holes inside of a water bottle. You got your job leaking your energy. You got a toxic relationship leaking your energy. You got the bills leaking your energy. You got all these things, all these afflictions in your life that's pulling on your energy, that's pulling on your life force. So it's one of those things where when you leak energy so much, that's where you go through an energy transfer, because it transmutes you into an NPC. So meaning that your water bottle is empty, meaning that you don't have enough inside. That's the inner child. And your inner child is the energetic biotonic frequency of a soul that is cultivated by the four basic elements, which is thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. And we're going to get into the willpower and the mechanics of it as we get through the presentation that's correlated to the publication. And I'm also going to give a transmission and a demonstration in classes that's based on this publication as well. So, like I said, tonight's transmission, I guess you could say it's a little bit of a lecture or whatever, because like I said, it's one of those things where, you know, a lot of people within, you know, the three-dimensional construct, they have a stronghold to this reality. And this reality is only facilitated by emotion. And human emotion in itself is the catalyst that threw off the human circulatory system, which is why, you know, planet Earth has been under red alert for the last 12 to 13,000 years, because of the energetic frequency of the moon that basically threw off the biotonic frequency and the circadian rhythm of your neurological faculties in your genetic format. So because of the energy of the moon, you've been off balance. So this book is going to help your ass get right back in balance. So like I said, that's the only way you're going to get to the apex of the golden age. That's the only way to do it. You have to shift your mindset first, because the mindset, just like what I said in my last transmission, I talked about the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is basically the neurological clock that has the ability to reset everything within the factions of the three-dimensional civilization that's based on polarity. They just came out with the movie called Tron. Tron is connected to Aries, and Aries is a representation as being in conjunction with Libra. So Libra and Aries together is based on the two Kemetic instruments of what we call the crook and the flail, right? Which is also a representation of the Alpha and Omega as you get right back to the golden age. And in the movie, they show you three pills. They show you a red pill, a blue pill, and a green pill. The green pill is a representation of going to the path of the middle way, which is the spirit of Melchizedek that is cultivated by geometric energy fields around the body, which is basically a protectorate, which basically makes you a guide. And then the red and the blue pill was a representation of the energies of the moon, right? So that's why I said you follow the path of the middle way in order to alchemize your reality within the simulation. Because one thing you got to understand about the simulation, everything is basically numerical and everything is mathematic. So that means that you have to have a mathematical mind in order to break the matrix, right? You have to think outside the box. And the box in itself was basically connected to the VMAT2 gene, right? You saying you cannot find the book, for those, is pinned up in the chat. You know what I'm saying? The book is in the chat. It's pinned at the top. So go in your chat, the live chat, and then just hit the link. That's all you got to do. It's very, you know what I'm saying, simplistic information. So let me know if the chat is working. I mean, let me know if the link is working. If the link is not working, let me know, and I'll put a different link up. Let me check. Well, the link, it shows you it's definitely working. Yes, okay. But yeah, this book is for people, man. Like I said, for those who was castigated in high school, because like I said, it's one of those things where, you know, kick all the trolls out, by the way. You know what I'm saying? We too grown for this shit. That's why I'm saying, like, a lot of people, the reason why you don't have the ability to manifest, because your aura is basically the foundational blueprint of envy energy, right? I keep telling you, you are not going to be able to alchemize your reality if you have a jealous energy, you have a toxic energy, because that means that your auric field, it has an ashy aura. You have an ashy ass aura, and you wonder why you cannot manifest in the golden age. Because everything that was cultivated by the old world, those are old ideologies. The old world was built on jealousy. It was built on envy. It was built on colonization. It was built on imperialism. It was built on economic disenfranchisement. Now we go into a different timeline. And if you have that old energy going into the fifth dimension, your ass is going to get left behind, right? You manifest from the heart chakra, and then you alchemize that reality by way of the mind. So that means that you have to be energetically balanced in order to manifest in this next timeline, right? And you know what I'm saying? It's pretty simple. You know what I'm saying? Soon as you start hating on people, soon as you start being, you know, competitive, a competitive energy, that's a manifestation blocker, right? I don't care if you try to say, oh, we supposed to, you know, it's showing good sportsmanship. You know what I'm saying? I'll put my information against yours, or you, nah, you operate from the love space. Everybody got their own journey. Who are you to infringe upon somebody else's, you know, spiritual journey? Who are you to infringe upon somebody else's teachings, right? Everybody got their own path. So before we get into it, you know, I'm going to show you a few things about the publication. Okay, I think I forgot how to share on this. Okay. All right. Hold on for a second, guys. All right. All right. So let me get the sharing real quick. All right. Now, for those, I'm trying to get a good idea of what the publication looks like. Now, this publication, when you're looking at the illustration of the cover, is based on the symbolism of the fall of the three-dimensional paradox. You got Hollywood falling. You got the St. Louis Arc, because I told you guys that St. Louis is one of the 7 cities that's in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation, which is also along with Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Detroit, New York City, and other geographical land masses as well. And it shows you the bottom of the Golden Gate Bridge, because as we go back to the galactic center, that is connected to the Golden Gate ritual, that's connected to the golden ratio, which is the resurrection of nature, because the golden ratio operates on the 3.14 sequency, right, which is the Fibonacci sequence of nature, because the 3 is a representation of the true Trinity principle, right, which is man, woman, and child, that is cultivated by the 47 prime of Euclid, which is the queen mother seat of the matriarch. And then the 1 is a representation of the life force. And the life force, using your prana energy to create balance within the foundational template of the matrix system, which is connected to the 4 basic elements of the soul, as I was telling you guys, which is thinking, reasoning, understanding, and real power, because the only way to reset the matrix system is to heal. And once you heal from the trauma, that creates a reset. So when you reset in the body, you reset in the mind. When you reset in the mind, you reset the neurological clock. When you reset the neurological clock, you reset the cosmic clock, and the cosmic clock shuts down everything in the 3-dimensional matrix of what you see in the background. So then you got the oracle in the background, which is basically an elder holding this crystal ball, because it represents a transitional shift that's based on spiritual metamorphosis, as you have the fall of the material order. And then you got the agents at the bottom with a political figure. And then you got the white horse, and then you got the planes falling, and then you got the Big Ben tower clocks in the background, and then you got the pyramids that's basically combating the energies of the corporate enterprises that was created by the patriarchy. So that means that you got the ancient world taking back the planet. So that's why. And you also see the binary code in the background of the publication as well, which is basically a representation of the binary code system of the matrix, right? That's connected to the supercomputer that's on the dark side of the moon. So the 1 is a representation of the life force, which is connected to the mother energy. Hold on. I don't think can you guys see my, hold on. Dang it. Hold on. Let me see. You guys can't see it. All right. I don't know why it's acting crazy like this. Let me see. All right. Okay, let's see if it pulls up now. All right, here we go. So what you see, like I said, this publication, when you look at, the illustration of it, this is basically the rise within the fall. You see the resurrection of the matriarch, which is why you have the pyramids in the background combating the energy of the demonstrative government. The demonstrative government that was created by the Luciferians, that's connected to the deep state shadow government, which is also known as the Canaanites. Now, I'm also coming out with a publication breaking down the methodology behind the bloodline of the Black nobility and how they're connected to the cherubim of what we call the 200 fallen angels in the Bible, of what we call the archonic forces in the Gnostic text. We're going to be breaking that down in my next publication that's going to be coming out next year, around the time next year. And the book is going to probably be about anywhere from 500 to 600 pages, because it's going to have an influx of information and showing you genealogical records from, the Canaanite bloodline and how it's connected to the Nephilim. And I'm going to show you through theological context and biblical context. I'm going to show you through occultic context and things of that nature as well. And this is the other part of the book. And it tells you right here, is just gives a little synopsis about the book or whatever. And this is another illustration of it. And it's going to be available on audiobook eventually. You know, it's one of those things where you got to be very meticulous. Like I said, I don't want people to steal the work and start putting it out on YouTube and in Audible, you know, Audible format. And I don't want them to put the PDFs. So right now you can only get a physical copy, and the link is in the bio for those who don't know where to get the publication. Now, this is another part of the book that I had. This is basically a prophecy for the awakened. The Sacred Book of the Chosen is a monumental call to awakening. This sacred scroll unveils a prophecy impacting Earth from 2025 to 2030, guiding the scattered kings and queens of light to shatter the matrix final seals. And those final seals, as I was telling you, the resurrection in itself takes place in the body first, right? This is why they're telling you about Three-Eye Atlas. This is why they're telling you about, oh, we found the Ark of the Covenant. This is why they're telling us that they're showing you so many timestamps of the number 33, because they understand that the Christ energy is right now, as we transition into the golden age, that's going to be trying to be siphoned by the Trump administration. So that's why I said, as I was telling you guys before, physical destruction is facilitated by spiritual energy that's transmuted from the cosmos. So that means that the consciousness has the ability to collapse the matrix that's connected to the final seals. So the final seals is not only subjected to the chakras of Earth, because in order to open up the chakras of Earth, you have to open up the chakras within yourself, right? And it's cultivated by the Trinity principle within yourself, which is not the epigenetics, but the endocrine system, the hypothalamus gland, but the hypothalamus gland, the thymus gland, and the thyroid gland. Now, the thymus gland, that's connected to the biotonic frequency of the soul, because there's a lot of people who cultivates the NPC energy. The NPCs, they're disconnected from the thymus gland from the age of 7 to 13 years old. So that means that they're disconnected from the heart chakra. So they don't have the light to connect with the inner child. So I'm going to also go into that, the metaphysical aspects of that, as I get through the presentation. So this book is also your map to escape control, unlock divine memory, and find your armor for the coming collapse, the rise amongst the 144,000 as new earth is born, right? New earth is only born through consciousness. That's the only thing that matters. Now, because of the context on the back of the book, you cannot see the great majority of it. So the back of the book is showing you the fall of the old world, the fall of the material world, as you have the rise of artificial intelligence, which is why you have the great majority of people on the back of the publication looking at their phones. These are the NPCs that's connected to the demiurge, meaning that they have an emotional connection to material order, because material order only has a temporal sustainability on the planet. There's no evolution for the third dimension. I keep telling y'all that. That's why they keep giving you the illusion of progressiveness. They give you the illusion of progressiveness because they know that we're going through reset. They try to make, hedonistic activity in a form of progression, right? They try to say that, they try to give you like this ideology that we're going into this, the apex of a dystopia and how things are shifting on the planet. But the only way to shift the planet is to shift the consciousness. You cannot shift the planet by way of artificial intelligence because, like I said, artificial intelligence is no match for those who's tapped into authenticity. Authenticity is the only thing that can beat artificial intelligence because artificial intelligence doesn't have a soul. Artificial intelligence has a spirit, but it doesn't have a soul. And a soul can only be cultivated by the sun heat genes, which are prominences, right? Which is why the electrical grid is basically an imitation of the Dragon Lake Line grid system, which is also known as the net of Indra, right? And the net of Indra is connected to the grid in the brain. So we're going to get into that as we get to the rest of these other illustrations. Now, I'll also talk about manifestation. Now, one thing you got to understand about the sine wave, right? Because the sine wave, when you look at the symbolism, it's a representation of a snake because a snake is also connected to the symbolism of the life force of the Kundalini energy within your genetic format. Now, every time you work, that means that you're connecting your time with money. So this is why they say time is money. So that means that you have to be entrapped by time in order to get some type of currency. But in this publication, I talk about how you're able to disconnect from the three-dimensional paradox by going within, which is the true spiritual currency. Because the true spiritual currency is basically the own frequency of the sine wave that is connected to 7.23 wavelength centimeters that has the ability to activate the crown and the root chakra, which makes your bandwidth a lot more intrinsic than everybody else because it can only be activated with geometric energy fields. Your sine wave operates on 7.23 centimeter wavelength frequencies, right? And that's from the root chakra to the crown chakra. So that means, like I said, if you have holes inside your aura, you're not going to be able to alchemize your reality. So that's why I said, in order to defeat the matrix, you got to take your time back, right? Because this is why they call it the Saturn moon matrix. Because the word Saturn comes from the word Satan, and Satan is equated to Chronos, and Chronos is chronology, and chronology is connected to an artificial time analysis mechanism, which keeps you stuck in a fixed position reality. So this is why I keep telling people, everything is based on the biotonic frequencies of the genetic format of those who have the non-ether, right? So that means that, like I said, that means that you have to go within in order to escape. If you're not able to go within to reap the benefits of external stimulation, your ass is going to get lost in the sauce. Because, like I said, the four elements of the soul, which is thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. So the willpower in itself is connected to the fact that a lot of people have to deviate from sexual gratification, right? You have to stop leaking your life force, right? If you can't control your sexual lust, you can't control shit else in your life. If you can't control your phallus, you can't control shit else in your life. If you can't control your yoni portal, you're not going to be able to control shit else in your life, right? Because that biotonic energy of the willpower is how you alchemize your reality. That is the true spiritual force. So that means that you need your life force, your sexual energy, which is able to activate the quantum engine in the quantum body. Because it's one of those things you got to look at your body like a vehicle. Because what if your vehicle, you're not going to be able to get from point A to point B if you ain't got no goddamn gas. So if you keep leaking your life force, which is being connected to people, places, and possessions, because people, places, and possessions is what put holes in your aura. Now, as I was telling you guys before, that's equivalent to a water bottle that got holes inside of it. You're leaking too much energy, which is why you're not able to manifest money, right? Real money, you tap in to the sine wave frequency within your genetic format. That's how you're able to make money. You don't make money by giving your energy to everything else. You give your energy to yourself because you have to build up yourself. Because even when you look at the metaphysics of the number 7.23 centimeters wavelength that's connected to the own frequency, 7 is a representation of the God frequency, and the 2 is a representation of breaking away from the dualistic paradox because you unlock the Trinity principle within yourself, which is the 3. So that's why I said you have to connect with the 4 basic elements of the soul, which is thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower, right? You have to understand yourself intuitively. You have to have the ability to have critical thinking skills as you get to the apex of the golden age, right? So your willpower, so like I said, you gotta, practice semen retention. A lot of you are not able to retain an influx of information. Why? Because you're leaking too much energy. Because one thing you got to understand about the sperm is also connected to your liquid intelligence and your neurological faculties. The more you spill your life force, the more that you're going to feel stupid, right? This is why I always say that horny people are always, stupid people are always horny, right? Because that denotes the fact that they don't have enough self-affirming practices to transmute that energy and do something that's going to get them to the next level because they too worried about rat pussy and sports. So now, I also talked about this in my publication. I talk about the 5 overcells of the body. Now, the Zohar body, the inception of the mechanics of that intelligence is connected to Kemetic spirituality. Kemetic spirituality, they talk about the Sahara body. The Sahara body is really the Zohar body Now, the gematria body is your three-dimensional self that's connected to the gematria code of the simulation. So once you break out of the box, that's when you tap into the electromagnetic body, which is mind, body, and spirit, which is the true Israel. And then that's when you type into the Eka body and then the epigenetic body. And the epikinetic body is what activates the epigenetics within your genetic format, because it's going to give you the kinetic energy, the stream down intelligence from the mental plane, and you upload it into the neurological interface through the neocortex, which makes you the one. So that's why I said your Zohar body is what's going to activate. It can only be activated with the 4 elements of the soul, right? And now I'm a living testimony because I follow these principles myself. So this book is not only based on historical and metaphysical information. Like I said, this book is a self-help book as well. This book is also for those who don't have, this book is for people who feel stuck. Like I said, this book is a quantum engine. This book is going to start that motherfucking engine up for you to get up and do something with your life, right? It's going to help you. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to understand yourself more intuitively, because it's one of those things where the book is one of those books where a lot of people experience certain things and are not able to put it in certain words. I put it in context for you inside the book. So this book is one of those things where you're not finna find the great majority of my ideologies. You're not finna find it in different publications or whatever. I give historical references inside the book, but a lot of this is based on my own interpretations on how I manifested my own reality by way of the law of attraction. Because I've always said I was going to be doing certain things. And my mom, she speaks about this on my Facebook page. She tagged it on my Facebook. And for those of you who don't follow me on Facebook, my name is Brydell Rice Bay. If you want to give me a follow on there, because like I said, one thing you got to understand, in order to tap into the Zohar body, you got to get right back into the inner child. And the inner child is only cultivated by going back to certain things that you loved as a child, right? So sometimes you got to sit the fuck down and think about some of the stuff that you used to do when you was about 10 years old, 13 years old, 15 years old, 8 years old, 5 years old. You got to tap back into those energies, because those energies is going to cultivate a memory. And that memory is going to lead you to a different portal. And that portal is the interstellar vortex portal for your level up, because it's going to bring you in alignment with your higher self. And your higher self, as I was telling you guys, is actually your Zohar body, which is the true spiritual currency. Because the Zohar body in itself, like I said, it operates on 7.23 centimeters wavelength of the own frequency, right? Mind, body, and spirit, which is the true Israel. It's not no geographical landmass. It's actually within you. So that means that the peace deal with Hamas and Israel, that's all a fallacy. Because that peace treaty is basically a representation of the fact that it's the apex of the catalyst of the judgment of America. Because that peace treaty is basically in alignment with the New Madrid fault line that hit on my birthday on October 14th of the 2023 solar eclipse, which was basically the Ring of Fire solar eclipse. So this is basically is a representation of everything coming full circle. That's what you got to understand. So, and then, I go into Metatron, right? Which is actually the spirit of Melchizedek, which is Michael or Michael, right? Because Melchizedek is the only thing that can slay the dragon, right? Or what we call the beast in Revelation. Because like I said, the Melchizedek is the true Lord of the Bible. Because Melchizedek is actually a spirit. It's a spiritual energy that is galvanized by gamma radiation that creates, bioelectricity. And that bioelectricity is how you connect with Zohar. It's how you connect with the 4 basic elements, right? You need these 4 components in order to get to the apex of the golden age. Because the 4 basic elements, if you don't have thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower, what's going to happen? It's going to create instability, and it's going to create irresolution in your life, right? It's going to create instability and irresolution, meaning that there's going to be no type of clarity. And when you don't have clarity, you have unbalanced energy. And unbalanced energy leads to an unrighteous energy, right? So that's why I said you got to be balanced. Everything in the golden age right now is based on balancement. So I'll go into giving the dichotomy between the NPCs and the chosen ones, and the chosen ones having the Christ energy, and how we're going to try to, and how the NPCs are basically foot soldiers for the demonstrative government that's coming from the Roman occupational processes that's coming from, the enterprises of the Matrix. So the NPCs are basically foot soldiers of the Matrix, but the ones who have the Christ energy, they're going to try to sacrifice us, because the NPCs, they have an emotional connection to the three-dimensional matrix. And as you have the rise of information, as you have the rise of intelligence, as you have the rise of, the matriarch, that crumbles the old world. And the NPCs is going to fall along with the old world, which is why, be very critical of family members, be very critical of friends that you went to high school with, just people, that's going to be pulling on your energy, right? Because like I said, the spiritual journey is a representation of you going back to the galactic center, which is the star Polaris, which is why when you look at this Masonic tracing board, because the path of the middle way can only be activated when you activate the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum can only be facilitated by the neuron fibers that's connected to the magnetites and the dendrites, and the magnetites and the dendrites is the 144,000 crystals in the brain to cultivate the Christ energy. So like I said, the NPCs is going to try to crucify the chosen, right? As we get into Matthew 22:14, many are called, only few are chosen. That's why in the year of 2026 and 27, that's going to be the blueprint for the great separation. And I also talk about the great separation in this publication as well, right? Man, this book, like I said, it goes into the great reset, separation, spiritual attacks or whatever. This book is not only, like I said, it's not only for those who are stuck in, who knows about, deep information and deep knowledge. This book is for those who is going through the initiation stages, right? That's what we call the initiation of the self-realization process in the spirit of Melchizedek. So this book is also going to help you break out of the artificial time analysis mechanism, the breakout of the time loop, right? Which is the material plane, because the material plane is no match for natural order, and natural order can only be cultivated by the matriarch, and the matriarch is what breaks down physical law that was created by the beast system. So it's one of those things where you got to be energetically balanced in order to get to the golden age. Now, for those that's been following me for a long period of time, I put out this about 2 years ago. It's an audio comic book. So like I said, you can see the level up. I went from having an audio comic book to having a real publication that's basically on Amazon. The link is in the chat. So a lot of y'all follow me when I put out this, about 2 years ago. And Raymond's Unk, he's the one that came up with the illustrations and everything. So, and I also got this audio book on my YouTube page as well. It's called The Tome of Maccabia. So now we finna get into some, I'm getting into some questions and talk to you guys for a little bit. All right. All right. So we're going to get into some questions in the chat. Okay. Salute to everybody in the chat. Salute to everybody in the chat. Put the rice bowls in there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. We're going to get into some questions. I'm trying to, if y'all got some questions about the publication, put them in the chat. So saw the solar eclipse during meditation. 3 of them flew towards me, had a red dot in the middle of them. A solar cross. So I'm not sure what that represents, but I know a solar crossing is also a representation of the true. I think that's what represents like what a Hebrew is, because I think Hebrew when you break down etymology or whatever, I think it's the one that crosses over or whatever. So that could also be a representation, because a lot of these planetary alignments is actually talking about, what's taking place within who you are on a genealogical level and on a genetic level. So it's one of those things where when it comes to theological context, you can't just be so fixated to the context of what's taking place inside the publication or whatever. So the great majority of everything that they tell you external is actually happening internally. So I'm not really sure about that. Let me see. Okay. Okay. We got a young, at the age of 17, what do you think I should be trying to do? Right now, you should be trying to create. As a young man right now, this is the doors, the hinges is off the doors right now. So as a 17-year-old, you should be tapping into your creative bag, right? Because your creativity is what basically makes you a creator. And what makes you a creator is what makes you a God. And what makes you a God is your authenticity. And your authenticity is what's going to lead you to your purpose. So this is basically a time right now, a duration period for you to be tapping into your creativity. Like I said, and you do that with self-affirming activities, right? That's how you tap into that energy. Transmutation. So we're going to get into some more. Okay. Do you think 3i Atlas is the mothership that will pick up the 144,000? If you do, as I was telling you guys before, when it comes to everything that they tell you in the multimedia, everything is based on external stimulation. So 3i Atlas is not it's subjective. It's based on perception. So from a metaphysical standpoint, when you're talking about, biology and microbiology. So when you're talking about 3i Atlas, it's actually talking about the 3-1 Atlas vertebrae that gives a etheric combustion to the 33rd vertebrae. So 3i Atlas is what turns you into the mothership, because the mothership is basically the activation of the Merkaba, right? And the Merkaba is the dualistic forces that creates the hexa alpha symbol, which is basically Solomon's temple. And Solomon's temple is the soul of man that is activated by the soul, right? That's how you activate the Merkaba, which is connected to the mythology of the 144,000, which is a frequency, and that frequency can only be magnetized through the heart chakra, right? So everything that they're telling you about 3i Atlas is actually talking about, neurological resets. It's talking about upgrading the recalibration of the non-ether energy. Because one thing you got to understand about the atmosphere is going through a transitional process, because the oxidative levels is starting to basically dematerialize, because oxidation is what breaks down the hemoglobin cellular structure within your genetic format to where it steals electrons from the cells in the body, right? This is why you start to age. So now we go into an Omicron-based atmosphere, because 3i Atlas is bringing an energy here to basically reverse the polarity of the aging that was cultivated by the beast system, to where, it keeps you stuck in a time loop, right? So that's why I said the sine wave frequency is within your genetic format, the 7.23 centimeters wavelength of the own frequency. So 3i Atlas is really talking about you. It's actually talking about those who are in alignment. It's actually talking about the chosen. So that, like I said, there's going to be an intelligence that's coming to the planet. So don't be surprised if somebody wakes up out of nowhere and they find themselves building a flying car out of nowhere, and nobody never taught them how to do that, right? That's what I'm saying. Because the only thing that's able to reverse the polarity of the beast system, there has to be a different intelligence that can only be extracted towards a certain people that, that was subjugated by, patriarchy. So that's why I said your energy alone as a chosen one, even when you're at work, a lot of these industries is going to collapse. It has to. It's already prophesized. So, like I said, when you have an authentic frequency, it's no match for material order. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to be at work, computers and everything is going to be glitching because of your energy. And your energy is only emitted from the heart and the mind, right? As I was telling you before, physical destruction is facilitated by spiritual energy that's transmuted from the cosmos. The spiritual energy is happening because of you changing your mindset. When you change your mind, you change your vibration. That vibration becomes magnetism. The magnetism from the heart, because you're trying to manifest through the mind and the heart at the same time when you get into neurocardiology. Neurocardiology tells you that the heart has 40,000 neurons in it, right? And it's 100,000 times more highly magnetic than the brain, right? So that's why I said that is the Trinity principle within you. That is connected to the endocrine system. The thymus gland is connected to the heart, but you have NPCs walking around and you wonder why they can't manifest. The thymus gland is depleted from the age of 7 to 13 years old. That's why when you look at certain people, they ain't got no motherfucking light in their eyes, right? They energy weird. You know what I'm saying? They got an unbalanced energy. They too emotional. That's why I said, and then you got some people who is subjugated about a fear. So what makes you think you're going to be able to receive the information that's coming from 3i Atlas if you operate from a place of fear? Because fear is a manifestation blocker also. Because everything you want is on the other side of fear. So like I said, if you have fear of the old world falling, like I said, your ass is going to fall with it regardless. Because like I said, the only thing that's going to get you to the next level in the golden age is creativity. Creativity, which makes you a creator, which makes you a god, which makes you an Elohim, which makes you an Anunnaki, which turns you into the mothership. So that's why I said everything that they're telling you in the media, everything that they tell you in these books and these movies is happening within your mind and your body. So like I said, it's basically a story. It's Freemasonic symbolism in real time. So we're going to get into another publication, not publication, I'm tripping. We get into another question. And mind you, for those who don't know, like I said, I don't give too much of myself online. When you're trying to do something, put out a publication, you putting out transmissions every week. You know what I'm saying? I'm a dad. I'm a full-time dad. I got full custody of my son. I'm in a full-time relationship. You know what I'm saying? Then I got to make time for myself, you know what I'm saying, in order for me to keep, leveling up and being able to alchemize different ideas in order, just to keep my sanity, you know what I'm saying? Because when you do stuff like this, there's a lot of things that's pulling on your energy, but on a positive aspect, because you're basically, doing something that's based on the magnum opus, which is the true form of alchemy, the magical process of turning nothing to something. So that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes you got to take a lot of shit off the table in order to stay balanced. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, it's one of those things where in order for me to put out a publication, stay in the gym, be a full-time dad, be able to tend to my relationship and all this other stuff, sometimes you're not going to be able to go to the gym. Sometimes you're not going to be able to sit down and read. So that's why I said sometimes you got to take certain things off the table in order to stay in a state of evolution. Because if you're too hard on yourself, that's going to create a stagnant energy, and the stagnant energy is a negative energy. And when you have a negative energy, that's going to create toxicity, and toxicity is going to put holes inside your auric field. And your auric field in itself is galvanized by the fascia system that's tether connected to the vagus nervous system that creates your energetic morphic field, which is your protectorate, which is your bubble, which is your spirit of Melchizedek. So that's why I said you got to be balanced. Because, there's going to be a lot of psychological operations that's going to be taking place that's going to be pulling your energy down. You're going to see a lot more unalivings. You're going to see a lot more detriment, a lot more afflictions within the news media and everything around you. So that's why I said you have to be energetically balanced for what is to come in between the years of 2025 and 2030. That's the only way you're going to get to the next level, balance. The golden age is all about balance. So we're going to get into another one. Question. Salute to everybody in the chat, by the way. Put the rice bowls in the chat. So, yes, you definitely got to be balanced. Because, and I was telling you guys before, if you work out more than you read, your ass is still out of shape. Right? And if you read more than you work out, you're still out of shape. You got to do both. You got to do both. Because like if you're physically healthy, that means you're going to be mentally healthy. And if you're mentally healthy, that's going to be the precursor for you to be physically healthy. So like I said, it's one of those things where, you know, you got to have balanced energy. Work on yourself every day, right? So that's why I said you got to have 4 different wins every day. You got to have a mental win, a physical win, a spiritual win, and a financial win. And those 4 basic elements is connected to the 4 elements of the soul: thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. Because when you tap into those 4 elements, those 4 principles of leveling up is going to lead you to the apex of the true spiritual currency, to where you're able to bring in real income. Because your income is based on your internal aspects of who you are as a human being on this planet. By way of the law of reciprocity, energy expands and returns to itself because it operates on the logistical order. Everything in the universe has structure and boundaries. So that's how you're supposed to be mentally, right? Because if you notice, like people that's connected to, you know, connected to the 3-dimensional world, like liberals, right? They accept everything. Oh, I'm this. I accept this. I accept this. When you accept everything, that's going to put holes inside your aura too. Everything that's basically righteous has boundaries, and everything that has boundaries is also in alignment. In order for you to be in alignment, you have to be in balance. So that's why I was saying, you know, you can't basically, you know, give your energy to everything. You know what I'm saying? You can't be, you know, you can't let a motherfucker be an anchor to your energy. You can't do it, right? Because that's going to create spiritual resistance. And then over the course of time, that's going to create spiritual spam, which is jealousy. Spiritual spam is jealousy, right? That's all it is. So that's why I was saying, man, it's one of those things, man, you got to tap into your creative bag. And that's the reason why, you know, during the time of, you know, 2020, when we had the shutdown, that was the duration period for those that's tapped in, for you to get your shit together and tap into your purpose. Because I told you, as we transition into a cybernetic dystopia, as we transition to this golden age that's being controlled by the Trump administration, as we transition into that timeline, you got to find your purpose, or they're going to find it for you. Think for yourself while it's still legal to, right? That's why I said you got to have critical thinking skills. Are you able to think outside the box to tap into your creativity? Because if you don't tap into your creativity, what's going to happen? You're going to turn into the slave that's connected to the new system. We're going to get into some more questions. Take your power back. That's what this book is basically talking about. So like I said, if you like the stuff that I put on my Facebook, you know, people been following me for years, you know what I'm saying? Way before I started doing videos or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like people, you know, have always been infatuated, you know, with my style of writing or whatever. So if you think, you know, everything that I was writing on Facebook was some, wait till you read this motherfucking book. This book, like I said, is going to start up that quantum engine to activate the inner child, right? It's going to activate that inner child. That's what, you know what I'm saying? That's what this book is all about. It's to activate the quantum engine within you for you to keep going. And like I said, this book is for the nerds. This book is for the outcasts. This book is for those, you know, the black sheep of the family, those who was basically ostracized, those who, you know what I'm saying, who's different than everybody else in their city, right? Because this is also connected to a form of theological context. You know, a prophet is not accepted in their hometown, right? A lot of the chosen, they are prophets. And a lot of people in your hometown, they don't fuck with you. Why? Because you have a different frequency. You have a different mindset. Because like I said, when you got a different mindset, like I said, you're going to move different. You move different when you know the truth, right? And that's going to create haters. That's what's going to make haters. You move different when you know the truth. Right? That's why for those who's basically disconnected, they don't understand what's taking place on the planet right now. They don't understand your spiritual journey. Your mama and your dad, everybody, you know what I'm saying, in your family, you know what I'm saying, they don't understand you breaking away from the generational curses as far as, you know, overeating, depression, you know, psychological inducement of indoctrination system that's connected to westernized curriculum systems. You know what I'm saying? They don't understand you deviating from that. But when you deviate from the three-dimensional matrix, you acting white now, right? Because you want to get your dietary system right. You know what I'm saying? You want to start reading more. Everything that they're telling you to do. Look, this is what it is. This is the crazy thing about when it comes to so-called black people. You know, the ones that I call the 85%. Those are the ones that's basically, you know, the deaf, dumb, and blind that's connected to the matrix. One thing about, you know, people who don't understand like what's taking place, you know, it's not their purpose to. It's not their purpose for them to understand your spiritual journey, right? It's not their purpose to understand. Many are called, only few are chosen. Matthew 22:14. There's a reason why you got to separate from certain people. There's a reason for that. You got to separate. Let me get into some more questions because I lost my train of thought a little bit. Salute to everybody in the chat, and salute to everybody, man, that's who bought the publication so far. Salute to everybody. Okay. Because like I said, you know, based in eschatology is really the metaphysics of the science of the end times. So it's not just based on the fall of the patriarchal system. It's also talking about self-help. This is how you reset your trauma. This is how it teaches you how to tap into your epigenetics and the Akashic records that's based on mind science technology. This book is really like, it's a one-stop shop, basically. And it's very digestible. It's not, you know, a long-winded publication. This book is going to get straight to the point, and it's going to activate something within you. And it's one of those books you're going to be like, damn, like I've been feeling like this my whole life. And when I'm reading this shit in this book, now I resonate with the information. That's what this book basically covers, all that. You know what I'm saying? It covers every aspect of those who's tapped in. So, and then I also talk about, you know what I'm saying, with you being the chosen one. Like I said, the path of the middle way is connected to who you are, you know, your characteristics and your attributes as a living soul on this planet. So that's why I keep saying, I always said this within myself. This is my phrase. I'm too white for black people, and I'm too white for the black. So that's why I said, you can't marginalize a chosen one. You can't just be like, oh, this person with this people. So that's why I said when you have true authenticity, it's one of those things where, like I said, I'm myself. You know what I'm saying? I wear certain things. I got a gold chain on and all this other stuff every once in a while. You know, I wear the Jordans and every once in a while because, like I said, it's a part of my costume. My costume, meaning that I have to be able to resonate with the people based on imagery and perception in order for me to get my information across in the message. So that's why I said you got to use the matrix in order to get out. Sometimes you got to use the matrix in order to pull people out. That means that you have to look like them. A lot of people are not going to be able to resonate with me wearing my Moorish hat and wearing, you know, all my spiritual drip. They're not going to be able to resonate with it. But they will be able to resonate with the message if I look just like them. Because like I said, we're not trying to heal people. We're not only, you know, healing people who are already healed. We're tapping into people that's, you know what I'm saying, who's trying to deviate from the matrix. That's who we're trying to help. That's one of the main things. So, let me see. Let me get to another question. Okay. We're going to get to another question. Trying to get into some more questions here. Okay. Can we expand and activate our thymus gland? The thymus gland, they call it the 144 Akina keys, because when you unlock that, it can only be cultivated by self-realization. So that means that the self-realization process, meaning that you understand your trauma intuitively to the point where you love yourself enough to basically go through the process to heal that trauma. Because like I said, healing trauma is also hitting a reset on your neurological faculties, because the trauma in itself is subjugated by the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is what keeps you stuck in a demiurge because it's connected to human emotion. So when you take back your emotions and you put it in balance with logic, that's how you reset the thymus gland, because it's basically going to create 0-point energy fields. And 0-point energy fields is also gamma radiation, which is the God frequency. So that's why I said the thymus gland is connected to the heart chakra. And like I said, you got the Canaanite. The Canaanite, because of their genetic format, they're disconnected from the thymus gland, anywhere from the ages of 7 to 13 years old. And for those who is moving like an NPC, the great majority of them also are disconnected from the thymus gland. Right? And those are also the same people who don't have internal monologue. Internal monologue is that little voice in your head, which is also, the inner child, which is the soul. So let me see. And one thing one thing about the information about this book is not only subjected to race. This book is, it's not about, if I'm a white boy or if I'm a black boy. This publication is going to be able to resonate with everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, this book is going to help you cross over. If you like, it's kind of like a dude being in the streets and them trying to change their life. So for those, it's basically, stuck in the third dimension and they trying to cross over into their higher self, this book is going to help you do it, right? Because one thing you got to understand about people, it doesn't matter if you so-called white or black. You just, that doesn't even matter. Everything that's connected to the higher order of the three-dimensional paradox or whatever, when you have the fall of the three-dimensional world, it's not based on how you look. It's about frequency. It's about authenticity. That's what it's about. Right? Now, when you get into cuneiform language, when you break down the word Bathari, Bara in cuneiform language means to take you to a different space and time. And that different space and time can only be activated by way of the resetting of the mind that's connected to your epigenetics. Because when you reset the mind, which is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, as I was telling you guys before in my last transmission, that's when you start to activate the hippocampus layer of the brain. The hippocampus layer of the brain is where you get your true spiritual gifts from, which is, clairvoyance, intuition, psychometry, levitation. Those are connected to your quantum entanglement processing system on how you tap into the metaphysical abilities of what I was basically describing. So that's why I was saying the Bathari gland is basically the anchor and the gateway to activate the hippocampus layer of the brain. And the hippocampus is where your spiritual abilities come from. So to understand the mind is to understand who you are. So like I said, you change your mind, you change your vibration. That vibration becomes magnetism. Everything is mindset. So that's why I said you got to be disciplined. You got to be disciplined. That's why I keep telling people, and stop telling people all your business. You leaking energy. Like I said, you got to have a silent grind for a loud success. A silent grind for a loud success. That's why I said you got to stay down until you come up. Stay out the way. Stay out the way and do your shadow work and heal. Because when you heal mentally. That's how you activate your Bathari gland. Right? Because if you think about the great majority of the superheroes, a lot of them, they had to alchemize their energy in order for them to tap into their power. Right? They had to go through the trauma. Because if you ever look at a lot of these stories about superheroes and supervillains, something always bad happened to them. Then they go through that redemption process. And then when they go through that redemption process, that's when they go to the energies of them channeling the energy for them to become a god. So the same thing takes place in real time when you're talking about your spiritual journey in your own story. That's the hero's journey. That's the resurrection process. That's why when you get into the ancient Kemetic spiritual teachings, the Pharaoh Seti, he built the temple of Abydos, right? Was basically in dedication to Osiris, Why is that? Because he understood the process of resurrection. In the process of resurrection, you have to go through the hero's journey, which makes you Heru, right? Or a hero, right? That's the Christ energy. We're going to get into some more questions. So like I said, everything you got to move in silence. You got to move in silence. You got to move like a serpent, right? You got to, within the factions of the third dimension, everything you do right now, you got to be very meticulous. You got to move like a motherfucking serpent, right? Quiet, meticulous, critical, you know what I'm saying, and very wise. Like I said, you gotta follow that blueprint. You gotta move like a serpent in order to activate the serpent. And the only way to activate the serpent is through mind frequency. This is where we get into neoclassical music as well. I also talk about that on how to activate the serpent mind. You activate the serpent mind through neoclassical music, right? Such as like Beethoven, stuff like that. So we're going to get into some more questions. So is it also not a coincidence? This is the snake year, the 9 year. So all this stuff they're showing you is symbolism, telling you what time it is on the planet. Hit me with some questions, y'all. I don't see no questions in the chat. And I also go into talking about monitoring spirits in the book too. Monitoring spirits. You know what I'm saying? There's motherfuckers, you know what I'm saying? They see you leveling up. They see you the chosen one. They see that you different than everybody else in your city. They see that, you know what I'm saying, that you speaking everything into existence. And that's why they watch everything you do from a distance. They watch every damn thing that you do from a distance to the point where, like I said, jealousy is spiritual spam, and they wonder why they can't manifest nothing in their life, right? So like I said, energy transfer is real. Energy transfer is real. Your circle got to be so small that it's closest to a dot. That's how small your circle got to be. Otherwise, you're going to be compromised by the great majority of these NPCs. I have a whole chapter in here talking about NPCs versus the chosen ones, right? And for those who don't understand what an NPC is, it's going to break down the methodology and the metaphysics of what an NPC is, right? And, you know, sad to say, the great majority of the people in our family are actually NPCs. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where you got to come to that realization. So it's like a video game. It's meant to be like that on purpose, because the NPCs is basically like an NPC that's in your life, or an NPC in your family, or just an NPC that's pulling on your energy. Just think of an NPC as a person in the gym that's putting too much weight, or putting, just enough weight on when they bench pressing. It's like, it's like you going to a spiritual gym when you're dealing with NPCs. Dealing with an NPC is like going to the spiritual gym, because, like I said, their resistance as you leveling up is going to make you stronger. So, like I said, you need that envy, you need that jealousy, you need that hate. That's why when chosen ones, when they find out somebody don't like them, we make it worse. We're gonna make that shit worse, because we use that energy as an alchemical resource for, the level up. We use that energy, which is a chip on our shoulder. I love when people don't like me. Don't let me find out that you don't like me. I'm gonna make it worse. I'm gonna make it worse. I'm gonna make it worse. You know what I'm saying? I'm very quiet, very, balanced energy or whatever, but you know what I'm saying? It's, at a certain instances or sometimes or whatever, I can be an asshole at sometimes, but sometimes you need that type of energy in order for you to get to the next level. Because I keep telling people all the time, being chosen is not all about love and light. You know what I'm saying? Being chosen is not all about love and light. That's that new age bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Being chosen is you being able to tap into your dark side while being righteous at the same time, right? Yeah, I work out, I meditate, and I read. Yeah, I'm a nerd, but at the same time, I'll slap the shit out you if you cross the boundaries. Because like I said, everything in the universe operates on a logistical principle. So that means that I have boundaries too. So if the universe has boundaries, don't overstep your boundaries. So that's why I said you got to be a spiritual soldier. So just because, you know what I'm saying, people who are quiet, you know what I'm saying, chosen ones, we keep our volume down for a reason, right? We keep our volume down for a reason because we understand who we are intuitively to the point where we can use our ego as a negative catalyst and take shit to the next level, right? But like I said, you got to have your dark and your light side. Just because, you know what I'm saying, I'm quiet, I'm to myself, I'm working out and I'm reading, you know what I'm saying? Don't mistake that as love and light. That's not what that is. That's called focus. That's called focus. That's not love and light. So that's why I said people don't understand the dichotomy between the two. So like I said, don't be so spiritual to the point where you become weak in love and light and accepting everything, accepting everybody. You know what I'm saying? When you operate from a high vibrational frequency, I don't hang out with low vibrational ass people. I deviate, right? You got to deviate because, like I said, energy transfer is real, right? And I don't want that type of energy around me because if you hang out with four low vibrational people, you're going to be the fifth one. So that's why I said that spiritual journey, you know what I'm saying? That spiritual marathon, that's a lonely journey. So that's why I said the path to the middle way means that your circle is so small that it's the closest to a dot. That's how small your cipher got to be, right? Because there's too many people out here compromised. Too many. This is why I don't hang out with a lot of men. I don't hang out with a lot of dudes. I don't have friends by choice. The reason that is because, like I said, I know the great majority of men right now are neurologically, you know, compromised because of the estrogen that they have inside their genetic format, right? It's too much estrogen, you know, within, you know, the great majority of all these foods and all these recreational drugs. So that's why I don't find myself, you know, hanging out with a lot of dudes because I don't want them to be having that jealous energy. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that type of vibe around me. That's why I said protect your energy. Protect your energy out here. It's ugly out here. You know what I'm saying? People are going through a lot of stuff without healing. And then they want to come around you. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I said, if you was raised right and you operate from a high vibrational frequency, do not make yourself accessible to those who is trying to work on themselves or for those who are not working on themselves, right? Because like I said, over the course of time, you're going to be compromised. Isolation. Isolate from everybody. Sometimes you got to break the fuck up with everybody. Sometimes you got to break up with everybody. Because when you break up with everybody, like I said, that is a form of a reset. Reset is also connected to fasting. You got to fast from the food. You got to fast from the alcohol. You got to fast from the sex. And then you transmutate that energy as an interstellar vortex portal, and that's how you level up. Sometimes you got to fast from talking. Sometimes you got to sit the fuck down and shut up. Sometimes you just got to, you know what I'm saying, be in silence. Sometimes, you know, you minding your own damn business is the most spiritual thing that you can actually do. Mind your business. Mind your business and focus on yourself. That's why I said that's how you manifest. You don't manifest by worrying about what other people are doing. It's impossible. Because like I said, when you start worrying about what other people are doing, that's going to take away the electromagnetism from your frequency. The more you give your energy to toxic relationships, gossip, rap, pussy, and sports, you lower your frequency band, right? And you wonder why you cannot manifest. You wonder why your life is in shambles. You wonder why you're not able to, you know, level up. You wonder why you feel stuck and stagnant, right? Because it starts right here, right? And it starts in both places, the heart and the mind. It's really that simple. Manifestation is really simple because, like I said, but because we live in a dualistic paradox, you got this dichotomy between good and evil. Some people are going to lean more to the left than they are to the right. They're going to lean more to the left because everybody's been compromised because everybody got different trauma. But some people got more trauma than others, right? So we're going to get into some more questions. I appreciate everybody in the chat, by the way. There's not a mandated cap on the copies because it's being published through Amazon. So Amazon is unlimited copies. If you decide to, order 5,000 books, they're going to send them to your ass. So like I said, you can, because they doing all the printing and everything. So like I said, I released this publication independent. I also had I had a publishing deal on the table as well, but I decided, do my first publication. I want to do this independent, because, it feels more authentic and it feels a lot more intrinsic when you do it that way. But maybe on the next one, because the next publication I'm doing is going to be about maybe 500 to 700 pages. And I'm going to give down, the inception points of the Black nobility and how they're connected to the cherubim of what we call the 200 fallen angels in the Bible. So I'm going to give a whole layout blueprint of where the Black Canaanites came from, the Black Draconians. I'm going to break down all that. The Black Amors, I'm going to break down all that. The imperialism aspects of it, how they created capitalism, how they basically took us out of our sovereign capacity. I'm going to break down the whole blueprint. And I'm also going to try to get Rod Hayes to do my foreword on that next publication, but that's not going to happen until next year. So that book, like I said, I've already started on it so far, and it's going to be about anywhere, maybe 500 to 800 pages. So that's why I said as we get to the apex of the golden age, because you got to understand we're in solar cycle 25, and solar cycle 25 is also connected to the mythology of the Amen, and the Amen, which means to reveal what is basically hidden, which is connected to the hidden sun, which is the black sun. So when you have the activation of the black chakra, which is the black sun, that's when you basically pull back the veil, and you pull back the veil with truth and knowledge. And this publication, the next publication I'm putting out, is going to, give you to understand the dichotomy between, the Canaanites and the Semitic people, and the cherubim and the seraphim, and the matriarch and patriarchy. Is going to give you a full scale of what's going to be taking place in that publication. So be prepared for that book coming out around next year, next fall. So so I'm locked in already. So like I said, I'm working on that. And this book, also 6 months from now, I'm going to turn it into an audio comic. I mean, not an audio comic, but an audio book. And I'm also going to make it a PDF as well, where you can get an ebook. But right now, I don't want people, stealing, the publication and sending out screenshots. My Cash App is Brydell Rice Bay. Hold on, I'll put it up in the banner for you. For those who don't know, because somebody just asked for my Cash App. Hold on for a second. In my Instagram, if you also have, some people want an autograph copy. Some people want an autograph copy. And and if you really want one, I can you can just hit me up on Instagram, and then I'll autograph one for you, and you can just Cash App me, whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? Whatever works for you. But you can hit me up on Instagram at BDL1014, and if you want an autograph copy. But this is my that's my Cash App at the bottom. My Instagram, BDL1014. We're gonna get into some more questions. And salute to everybody in the chat. Okay. And also, if you purchasing the book, please leave a review, because the review is going to push it more in the algorithm. And we definitely want to try to make this publication a bestseller, because like I said, this book is very digestible. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to know real deep metaphysical, historical, theological information in order for you to understand this book intuitively. So this book, like I said, this is the initiation. And it's also for those who's already tapped in. So this book is a balanced book. You can give this to your grandma. If she's asleep, you know what I'm saying, she an NPC, you can also give this book to people in your family who were stuck in the third dimension. So like I said, this book is not only subjected to those who's tapped in and know what's going on. In fact, like I said, if you already tapped in, it's going to help you further your journey. Okay, we can get into some more questions. Okay. And I appreciate you guys. Make sure you leave a review whenever you get the publication. I'm not sure what you mean by this. How do you reverse 32 years in this system, and what's ignorant to all of this? And well, I'm not sure what you understand it, but in order to, you got to understand. I also talk about the sacred 23 of the Pali Mystic, which is basically the Sastragan, because the sacred 23 can only be cultivated by the equation of pi. So the 23 is actually a mirror flip for the number 32, which is also a mirror flip for 23 as well. So 23 is the only number that's able to pierce the veil of the matrix, because the gematria code for the number 23 is basically like, the metaphysical number to reverse the polarity of everything that's connected to the simulation, because numbers is the only thing that's in between time and nature. Numbers is. Because everything in the universe is mathematical. So that's why it goes into the movie. I think Jim Carrey, he talks about the number 23. Because like I said, the number 23 is how you pierce the veil. Because the number 23 is really a 5, and 5 is associated with Mercury, and Mercury is associated with Thoth, which is the spirit of Melchizedek, which is the Christ energy. So that's why I said the Fibonacci spiral, because when you look at the Fibonacci sequence, the equation of pi, 3.14. 3 is a representation of the Trinity principle. 1 represents the life force. And the 4 is also connected to the foundational blueprint of the heart chakra, right? So that means that you have to be balanced here. So, yeah, man, woman, and child. Yep, and 5 is intelligence. And 13 is a representation of the resurrection of the matriarch, because the number 13 is really a bee, and the queen bee is actually the rise of the so-called black woman. It's not a coincidence that Beyonce calls herself the queen bee, right? When you watch the movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth, when he came down on the craft, right, his craft looked like a honeycomb structure, right? Because the honeycomb structure is connected to the gold elixir that sits at the base of the spine, which is basically the resurrection process on how you're able to travel to different dimensional planes of existence, right? To where you're able to manipulate the space-time continuum. So the way the matriarch operates, it operates just like the insects, because the insects, such as the bees, they operate on a matriarchal frequency. So the 13 is a bee, and the 13 is a resurrection of the matriarch, and the 13 is the queen mother seat of the 47 problem of Euclid, which is Isis, Osiris, and Horus, which is also connected to the royal arc of Isis, Ra-El, which is the true Israel within who you are. So, not sure if I answered your question, but I tried my best. Sorry about that. I tried my best. Hold on for a second, guys. Okay. We can get into some more questions. We'll get into some more. Let's see what else we got. If y'all got any questions about what's taking place, current events, ask those too. Because, this is a time where you can, kick it with me and, ask me whatever. It's this book. I mean, not this book, but this transmission is not only subjected to, the methodology behind the publication. So you can ask me whatever. Hold on for a second. Hold on for a second, guys. Hold on. Let me text my dad back real quick. All right. Hold on, I'm texting my dad. But yeah, put the rice bowls in the chat. And for those of you who is looking for the publication, the link is in the bio, right? Not in the bio, but the link is also on my post page, and it's also at the top of the chat. Let me text my father back for a second. So like I said, the book is not only for those who's tapped into higher knowledge. It's for everybody. Now, as me and Rod Hayes, we was talking about, maybe I talked to Rod Hayes last week. We talked on the phone for about 3 hours, and we was talking about, 3i Atlas is really a timekeeper. It's a timekeeper that's tether connected to the moon. So this is why you're seeing so much symbolism of the number 33, because the number 33 is actually a timestamp that's connected to the spiritual marathon. Just like when you run in a marathon, there's a timer for it, right? So the number 33, which is why, Nipsey, he died when he was what? He died when he was 33, because that was basically the timestamp of when the fall starts. That's why he was sacrificed, right? There's a reason for that, because in order for Nipsey to be extracted, he was basically the sacrifice for the timeline that we basically on right now, because he had a Christ energy. He had a Christ energy to him, to the point, like I said, that he had to be extracted. I actually have a show on Brother Rich's channel. And salute, to my elder, King Simon. King Simon, the legend, what I'm saying? He's worked with Khalid Muhammad. He's worked with a lot of people, what I'm saying? Not just in the spiritual community. He's also worked with people in the music industry as well. And I think he's done a lot of stuff as far as like different hosting events or whatever. He's a beautiful host, and he's very, he's a beast when it comes to the numerology. So, King Simon, he came out with the numerovation or whatever, and he's going to tell you the metaphysics of numerology. And he's actually, the one that put the battery in my back for me to put out the publication. So salute to King Simon, salute to the elder with that, and salute to Brother Rich. You know what I'm saying? How did Christ? I'm not sure what the sycamore tree is, but I can answer this question right here. The purpose of the entire government shutdown, the government shutdown is actually the transmutation process by going from maritime law to common law. Maritime law is connected to the demonstrative government, which is the blueprint for the corporate apparatus that's connected to the political tyranny that's coming from the Trump administration. And then you have common law. Common law is for the people, that is facilitated by a republic. And the republic is for the people. And the people is the indigenous people. So that's why you see in the great majority of all the enterprises and the great majority of all these things that's connected to the simulation are starting to fall. So that's why I said that the beginning of the book, the first chapter, is called The Rise Within the Fall. Because the rise within the fall is actually moonfall, because the moon is also a representation of the dualistic energy of patriarchy, right? Because that's why when you get into the inception of creation, it talks about the splitting of an atom, because the splitting of an atom is what created, a quantum entanglement, right? And a quantum fluctuation. So now because of polarity, a lot of people, they don't have the ability to, decipher what's good and what's evil. So the government shutdown is basically the new republic deviating from democracy, and democracy is basically the blueprint for demonic rulership, because democracy is connected to Canaanite culture, and Canaanite culture is connected to sacrifice, and sacrifice is connected to the great majority of the industries that's coming from the black budget government, which is why Donald Trump is going after the cartel, which is why Donald Trump, he shut down the government, which is why Donald Trump is coming after the Democrats. So that's why I said it's connected to a demonstrative government. The government's been bankrupt since 1933, right? Because that's why, when you had the stock market crash in 1928, that's when it fell from the gold standard, and then they created Social Security, and the Social Security is what turned us into humanoid real estate. So that's why I keep telling y'all, this process right now we're going through can also be detrimental if you don't understand who you are on a sovereignty level, because in order to have the reset, you have to reset the debt, and in order to reset the debt, that means that you have to reset the timeline of humanity, meaning that you have to unalive a great majority of people. Because I told you, the money's not backed by gold. We're actually the true currency, because that's why we got Social Security numbers. So if they want to eliminate the debt, that means that they have to eliminate us, right? Because that's why I said you got to deviate from the old paradigm, because the old paradigm is going to fall and it has to reset. Exactly. You state property. That's why they call you a United States citizen. When you break down the etymology of the word citizen, the prefix of the word citizen is city, and sin means munsable slave. A munsable slave to the system that takes you out of your sovereign capacity, because you don't have any type of jurisdiction or any type of pedigree on in the United States, basically. Yeah. So that's what this government shutdown is all about. You can say it's a good thing and a bad thing as well. It's a gift and a curse. Because like I said, Donald Trump is playing both sides. He's not resetting the system because he wants to. He has to. He has to abide by the laws of the universe. We in the last sun cycle. A sun cycle, you're supposed to have a republic. You're not supposed to have a patriarchy in the sun cycle. Like I said, they understand the laws of the universe, and the celestial alignments has to basically be in correspondence with the political infrastructure. So the political infrastructure has to mirror what's taking place in the cosmos. So if we're in solar cycle 25 and we in the sun cycle, you got to have a matriarch. You can't bring democracy. You can't bring a demonstrative government. You can't bring all those energies, Piscean energy, into the golden age. It's not going to work. That's breaking universal law. So whatever Donald Trump is doing, he's doing it because he has to. But he's also playing both sides, which makes him a Luciferian, right? He is the false light. He is the false light. Hold on for a second. Get into a couple more questions. All right. Okay. When you're having a spiritual awakening, it can also affect your body, meaning reconstruct. Yes, it can. Yep. This is why I keep telling people, I have a veneration, so much for fasting. Fasting is the closest way you can get to God, meaning that it's the closest way to tap into your inner self, right? Because like I said, spirituality is all about discipline. It doesn't matter about the aesthetics of head wraps and you got locks and all this other stuff. That's not what spirituality is. Spirituality is, do you have the ability to be energetically balanced mentally and emotionally? Mind, body, and spirit, right? And spirituality is all about not being tricked. You know what I'm saying? Because you got a lot of people who got all the crystals, they got all the head wraps, they got all the spiritual drip, but they still out here talking about, oh, I vote for Donald Trump, or I voted for Kamala. Come on, man. That's why I say it doesn't matter. The aesthetics of it, spirituality is all about your mindset. What is your mindset like? Because your mindset is going to emit your frequency, right? That is what you call the conscious energy grid of the dodecahedron, which is the quintessence of the universe. And the quintessence of the universe is your spiritual self, which is the Zohar body, right? So that's why I said, you know, you got a lot of people out here, you know what I'm saying? They got all the spiritual garments or whatever, but they're very much disconnected from, you know, from source. It doesn't matter about how you look. It's about how you think, right? That's what being conscious is. Being able to critically think for yourself. It's not about what you wearing, and if you went outside and you know what I'm saying, you planted your feet in the ground. Yeah, that's good that you did that. That's good. That's great. But are you able to decipher who's the enemy? There's a lot of people out here get all the crystals and everything. They don't even know who the enemy is. They don't even know who the black nobility is. They don't even understand that there is a black, you know, faction of entities that's controlling the European on the surface to subjugate the indigenous people for the last 6,000 years, right? That's why I said it's all about your mind is an emulation of what's taking place spiritually, right? That's why I keep telling people, you know, you got a lot of people who believe spirituality is all about just, you know, letting go of everything, letting go of how they look, letting go of their house. Because one thing you got to understand, you know, your sacred energetic space is an emulation of what's taking place mentally and physically and spiritually. If your room is a mess, your life is a mess. If your car is a mess, your life is a mess. If your motherfucking house is a mess, your life is a mess. So sometimes, like I said, you got to turn down the outside world in order to understand what's taking place inside. You got to, like I said, you got to clean up your energetic spaces. Because if your energetic space is clean, that means you clear up here mentally. So when you balance out those energies, that's going to open you up for a different, you know, reception. The reception to get new energy from the cosmos, right? One thing about the golden age is that there's going to be an influx of new information that's coming to the planet, because that's why the oxidation levels is basically on the planet starting to deplete. And the reason that is because, like I said, the vibration is operating from a different octave vibration. So when you got a different frequency on the planet, what's going to happen is, you know, you're going to be able to step into certain things and certain energies and certain timelines that, you know, the great majority of people are not able to do. So you got to reset the body, get massages, work out, read. You got to do all those things, because you can't, you know, that's why I said people just think that, you know, you being spiritual is not the finish line. You got to be proactive. You got to be proactive. You can't just rely on crystals just like a motherfucking Christian just relies on the Bible. You know what I'm saying? You also got to have physical protection as well, not just the spiritual protection. You got to have the physical protection. You got to have ammunition. You know how to fight. Can you protect yourself? You got to know how to do all these things. You can't just rely on the locks and the headdress. You know, that's not what spirituality is. That's not what spirituality is. And this book is going to help you. I'm telling you, this book is very digestible and it's going to help you. What you're seeing with the IRS is basically the crumbling of the 3 city states, because it's connected to the city of London that controls the great majority of, you know, the economic system. So the fall of the economic system that's connected to the IRS, which is also interconnected to the demonstrative government. So that means they're going to try to implement a quantum crypto control system that's connected to the one world currency that's going to be facilitated by BRICS, which is why, you know, China is doing different deals with other people in other countries to bring in, you know, more people along with the BRICS currency. So, and plus, you know, the American dollar this year has dropped about, you know, 10%. The American dollar has. So this is a good thing. Because the fall of the IRS, the fall of the economic system, to turn on your true spiritual currency, which is your higher self. That's you. Okay, got another question. Hey, salute to Copious 4. Salute to you. Is everything happening right now from stocks crashing, inflation, natural calamities, just separating fifth dimensioning? Well, everything that you see right now, like I said, this is basically, the precursor to the great separation. So that means that, everything within the factions of the third dimension is separating, right? And it's separating by way of frequency, and the frequency is cultivated by mind science technology. So like I said, it's the consciousness of the planet that's making everything fall. I talk about it in the last video, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, because I also talk about it in some of my interviews. And I said that, the great majority of the matrix will fall if Black women just heal, right? Because the healing takes caps off the neurons, and when you take caps off the neurons, that activates your energetic morphic field. Your energetic morphic field is connected to the star Polaris. And that's when you pull information from the magnetosphere, the mental plane. And that intelligence in itself is what crashes the material order of the third dimension. So consciousness has the ability to shut down everything in the matrix. So that's why they call it the Saturn Moon Matrix. There's a reason why the women, they have a 28-day cycle. Why is that? That's because, like I said, the energy of the moon is pulling on a frequency. The frequency of the moon is what threw off it's what basically threw off the spiritual order of the matriarch. That's what the moon did. They even talk about the moon, how there wasn't no moon in our solar system in Zulu mythology. They talk about that in Zulu mythology. Yeah, the Michael Jackson movie, you got to watch the movie called Moonwalker. The Michael Jackson movie, it also shows you the macabre activation, because, they understand within the movie, it was showing you the activation of the flower of life. The flower of life is that quantum engine to basically, catapult yourself into, activating the macabre, which is the light ship in the body. Because in the movie, he turns into a spaceship. And also, when you look at the cover of the movie, it shows you Michael Jackson. It shows you the color spectrum of the rainbow. And the rainbow is also symbolism, talking about the alignment of the physical body in the human circulatory system. The reason it's flatlining, see, this is why I said it's flatlining, which is why artificial intelligence is going to use the MQ-9 Nano Reaper drone technology to basically subjugate the frequencies of the consciousness of Earth. The MQ-9 Nano Reaper drone technology is basically a nomenclature title for smart dust particles. So the smart dust particles is teleconnected to the satellites, and the satellites is starting to fall. There's about, I think, 10 satellites that's falling from the sky every day or something like that. These satellites that's coming from Tesla. That's because the consciousness of the planet is starting to rise up, because the electrical grid nodes of the planet is basically an emulation of the conscious energy grid of what we call the net of Indra. And the net of Indra is the dragon ley line. And the dragon ley line corresponds with the gematria body to where you're able to break out of the time loop of the meta frequency. Let me see. Everybody got their own perceptions or whatever, based on what I talk about or whatever. I would say no, but, everybody got their own journey. Who am I, to infringe upon your journey? So I'm not going to tell you to not go, but me, myself, I wouldn't go, because I know that the military is connected to the corporate apparatus. And eventually they're going to use the military and they're going to turn them against the American people. So me, I wouldn't do it. But you can also use the military as a catalyst for you to be disciplined. Like I said, there's a lot of modalities that comes with the three-dimensional matrix. You know what I'm saying? Like a person becoming a police officer or a firefighter All these things, you know what I'm saying? There's a polarity that comes with it. There's negative aspects with it. There's positive aspects with it as well. You going to the military can basically prepare your mind for your spiritual journey because it's going to give you the propensity to be in alignment, working out, eating right, and all this other stuff, being able to cultivate some type of structure in your life. The reason why a lot of people are not balanced is because they don't have structure. You got to have structure. The best way to start to obtain structure in your life is to plan everything out. Because when you plan things, that means that you have a futuristic mindset. And the futuristic mindset is going to lead you to a different timeline. That's a portal. I don't care if you got plans to go to the motherfucking grocery store. Plan that. You know what I'm saying? If you got a plan to go get some aesthetics and some socks and some drawers and all this other stuff, just stuff for the house, you got to plan everything. Stop doing everything impulsive. Oh, I feel like going here. No, you plan it. You plan everything in your day because the more you plan, that's going to cultivate discipline. And that discipline is going to lead you to the apex of righteousness. Everything should have a plan. And like I said, I follow my own teachings. You know what I'm saying? I'm not everything that's in this book. I'm not telling you anything that I don't do. You know what I'm saying? Anybody in you know, for the people who know me in real life, you know what I'm saying, that know me in the city, if anybody's watching or whatever, they know how I carry myself. They know how I carry I'm very structured. You know what I'm saying? I'm not energetically out of balance. I move with a purpose. I have a sense of self-direction. You know what I'm saying? My energy is not flimsy. You know what I'm saying? I'm very sturdy, and you know, and I mean what I say, and I do what I say. And it's one of those things where over the course of time, I'm a living proof of, you know, of my own manifestations. So that's why I was saying, you know, the teachings that's inside this book, if you follow those, you know what I'm saying, if you're trying to manifest spiritually on a financial level, or if you're trying to manifest on a physical level, I follow all the principles in this book, and I've been doing it my whole life. So that's why I said the great majority of the methodology that's coming from the book, a lot of it, you're not finna come. It's gonna sound. You can tell that it's not extracted from other people's ideologies. You know what I'm saying? So it's based on my own, you know, independent research within myself on my own spiritual journey. And I just put it in publication format and basically lined it up with prophecy. Okay, we're going to get to two more questions. Yes. And salute to everybody in the chat, man. I appreciate you guys. Okay. Let me see. Well, also the firmament, I also talked about in the publication the year of 2043, because according to Dr. Malachi Z. York, the firmament is going to break open in 2043 because 2043 is actually a 9-year. So the 9-year is also a representation of completion. So 2043, the inception of that mechanics, it started with the Philadelphia experiment, because that's what basically created a big rip in the universe, because they try to make a naval intelligence ship disappear. And so from 1943, 53, 63, so on and so forth, you know, since the inception of 1943, there's a vortex that opens up to where there's an energy that comes, streams down from the cosmos. So from 1943 to 2043, every 10-year in increments, there's energies that's coming to the planet to resurrect the consciousness of the planet. Right? So the firmament in itself is a form of spiritual entrapment. It's soul entrapment, which is why I said the Saturn moon matrix, because there's a reason why the great majority of the religions, they operate on the Sabbath, and the Sabbath is connected to the energy of the moon. So the firmament is also used as a negative catalyst for spiritual and soul entrapment, because every religion is a veneration of the cube, and the cube of Saturn is Metatron's cube, and Metatron's cube is actually Kronos, and Kronos is Enlil. And then when you get into the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh means agreeable and disagreeable, which makes Satan the prince of air, right? Which is Enlil. Enlil means Lord of the sky. So Lord of the sky, meaning that you're Lord of the third dimension. Lord of the third dimension, which is why God of the Bible in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 3, he separated the intergalactic waters from the third dimension and created the firmament, because the firmament represents the cutoff. So when anytime you trap light, that takes away from your magic, because your magic is actually your magnetism, and your magnetism is how you manifest and tap into your spiritual abilities. That's how you do that. But now you got the firmament, because I talk about it. You have a firmament over your brain, and then you also have a firmament over the planet, because your mind is a microcosm of the macrocosm. Salute to Bobby Hemming. If anybody knows Bobby Hemming in real life, tell him I said what's up. Salute. Even though I told Rod to tell Bobby I said what's up, salute to the master teacher. Because, you know, I feel where, you know, the prophet, you know, Bobby Hemming, where he comes from when it comes to the, you know, the great majority of his teachings, because as I was telling you guys, the information's inside the movies. You got to watch the movies. The movies is nothing but Freemasonic symbolism that leads up to the timeline that we're actually in right now, that's actually talking about your genetics. You got to watch these movies. Yeah, I know. Rod said he speaks with them. That's why I said that. You know, and another thing, as far as like leveling up information, a lot of people always ask me, bro, how are you able to, you know, remember so much information? You know why? Healing. Because like I said, you got to heal mentally. Because when you have a fragmented mind, meaning that you have scattered thoughts, that means that, you know what I'm saying, you're not able to compartmentalize information and upload it into your neurological interface to where you're able to extrapolate knowledge at a high level and receive information at a high level. There's a reason why people who is disconnected from source, they're going to have a hard time in the golden age. The reason, you know why? Because it's called the Hope Field Network. The Hope Field Network is connected to the factions of your neurological chemistry. The Hope Field Network means that you don't have enough data space in your brain to absorb new information. It's kind of like a phone, like an iPhone 7. An iPhone 7 can't have an iOS update that's in 2025 because, you know, of the blueprint of the phone itself is too old. So that's why I said, in order to get these new energies, you got to upgrade yourself. You got to upgrade yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And this book right here is going to teach you how to do it. I don't care if you're stuck in Christianity. I don't care if you're stuck in Islam. I don't care if you're stuck in, you know, whatever monotheistic religion. This book is going to recenter you, because anybody can resonate with the publication. Because like I said, this book is going to answer a lot of questions that a lot of people been, you know, searching for, you know, online and all this other stuff. So this it's not only a conspiracy publication or whatever. This book, it covers everything. It's prophecy, conspiracy, mental health, metaphysics, talks about everything. You know, also give a dedication forward in the publication, talking about you know, Dr. Malachi Z. York and the Prophet Noble Jew Ali. I also talk about them in my cosmic foreword. So for those coming in, you know what I'm saying, the publication is out. You can find it on Amazon. Type in Bridell Rice Bay. Bridell Rice Bay at the bottom. The Sacred Book of the Chosen. And right now, I think it's number 7 or number 5 in Ancient Occultism. So the publication is doing pretty well. So you can find it there. The link is in the chat. And I appreciate you guys, man. I appreciate you guys for, you know, chopping it up with me. And we're going to be back again with another transmission soon. And I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. End of transmission. Is he asleep?